Welcome to Wellness Woodbridge. I'm your host, Ann Mazza of Vito Mazza Salon and Spa and Hair and Scalp Wellness. And I'm so excited to be back today in studio with you. And I have a very special guest, Jacqueline Crocker, who is a licensed clinical social worker. And we're going to discuss a very important topic, which is anxiety and stress. Most specified, we're even going to talk about how that affects children. So we're so excited to be here with you and glad that you could join us today. Jacqueline, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
This is a great topic. It affects everyone. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about you and tell me what you do.
Sure. So I graduated from Monmouth University with my master's in social work, and I have been working with children and families for about over 15 years now. I work in homes, and I also own an outpatient group practice in East Brunswick. And I see anxiety a lot, so this is a big topic.
Yes, I think it's just heightened. It's the world today, so I can't wait to hear your impression of all of that and how you feel like our children and families have been affected, because it really is a wellness issue. I mean, this is something that affects how we feel, you know, every minute of the day.
People are anxious all the time. You have your regular stressors every day. Everybody experiences them, and then it goes into, you know, if you're not really taking care of it, it can become panic attacks. It can become OCD or obsessive compulsive disorders, and it can really affect people's lives. It can affect their relationships. It can affect their work or school. It can affect them in the community. It can actually paralyze people from doing what they want to do. And it's a big barrier to people reaching their goals and being the most productive that they want to be.
Yes. You know, I have my bachelor's in social work as well, and it interests me very much to talk about like how much it could possibly be things going on in your internal system, like maybe, you know, endocrine wise with hormones and changes, you know, in your body. I know that myself, like I've gone through a bout of anxiety, but it was when I was going through something, you know, like a partial hysterectomy. So I'm wondering how much of that could be external and how much of it we can kind of avoid.
So the longer you wait to deal with it, the worse repercussions it has. So if you're not taking care of your anxiety, and I kind of say anxiety and depression because a lot of times when you see somebody with clinical anxiety, it does sometimes come along with depression, and the treatments are kind of the same. But the longer you let it go, the worse it does damage in the chemicals in your brain and your stress hormones, and it can cause medical ailments. And so catching it early and being able to manage it. And I think people a lot of times think that anxiety is a bad thing. Oh, I'm feeling anxious. I shouldn't feel like this. Why am I anxious? Why am I worried about something? But it actually serves a purpose, and it's really not about getting rid of your anxiety. It's about coping with everyday stressors and exactly managing it.
No, absolutely. So what do you find can be some of the symptoms that, you know, it's so hard to label it, oh, I have anxiety. And then the minute you tell yourself you have anxiety, then you feel like you have anxiety. And now that self-talk in the back of your head is, you know, damaging. But what would be a generalized, you know, symptom of anxiety?
So physically, people report rapid heart rates, trouble breathing deeply, palms getting sweaty, shaking, ticking, those kinds of things. You can see when people have it when they're nail biting or picking at something. In your mind, your brain, some people call it monkey brain or scatter brain. You can't really seem to get your thoughts together. You can't really focus. And when you're talking about kids, you see it, people label it as ADHD in school. It's misdiagnosed a lot of times. It's just anxiety. They can't focus. They don't know how to deal with the stress going on in their life.
So almost like withdrawing, like I felt like that, you know, it's like all you can think about or all you can deal with, you know, when you do have that or you're experiencing that. And I think it's a fear. Like for me, it was like a fear-based, like fear of being sick.
Worries.
Worrying about it. So,
and they're unrealistic worries when you think about them. And worrying about them doesn't really do anything. There's no purpose in it. But yet we can't really seem to control our thoughts. They're just these ruminating worries about things.
My favorite is worries like a rocking chair. It gets you nowhere. It's like you're just on it and you just have to get off, you know. But it's hard, you know. I just say that to myself often, but I think that most people do deal with it and just don't know how to get past it.
That's right.
What do you tell your clients to cope?
So it really depends on their situation. And it depends on, for me personally, I like to use cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness practices like meditation, yoga, and grounding techniques, but everybody has their own techniques. My favorite is the breathing techniques because they're just so easy to do. And when you talk about managing anxiety, you're really talking about managing these physical symptoms that you're having, right? So you're noticing, the first part is really being mindful and noticing what your body is doing, right? So if you're sitting there and you're feeling anxious, like I am right now,
you haven't been on TV before.
No. Your heart is kind of beating fast, and to be able to slow that down a little bit, taking deep breaths, and there's a lot of different kinds.
Maybe we should practice one.
Yes, we absolutely can. Okay, so my favorite one is where you breathe in through your nose for 3 seconds, you hold it for 3 seconds, and then you breathe out for 6 seconds. Okay, out of your mouth. Okay, so
let's do it. 1,
2, 3, hold, 2, 3, blow out of your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah. I have heard of that before, but I'll tell you, it does work. But it's like forcing yourself to do it. And do you do it? How many times do we do this?
I do it whenever I'm feeling anxious. If I'm in the car and I'm on my way to work and there's traffic and I'm worried I'm going to be late, you can't control the situation, I do these breaths, I calm myself down. There's no point in getting my body all worked up over something that I can't control.
Absolutely.
Right? Because then the worries start to kick in. Oh, I'm gonna be somewhere late and they're going to think that I'm not reliable or I'm not, this and all these thoughts. And that's when the cognitive behavioral therapy comes in and you start to challenge your thoughts and how true they really are. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, no, it's so valid. I think that, there isn't one person that can't say that wouldn't be useful for them.
Yeah.
But I do like the breathing. I do know that I forget to breathe. I literally catch myself in the midst of running around and I'm like working and doing things and everybody needing me, and then all of a sudden I'm like, have I breathed?
Exactly. Your breath is an anchor. Right, and so when people are talking about things like meditation and being able to practice bringing your mind back into being able to control your mind, you have to have some kind of an anchor, something to bring you back, something to focus on. And your breath is, I think, the best thing to focus on. It's always there. It doesn't bring up any memories, because sometimes when you say things to yourself as an anchor, it'll bring something up that's, you don't really want to think about, or the breath is always there. And you're right, you breathe like short when you're
shallow
panicking. Yes. And so just being able to, some people get hot when they're anxious, and I'll tell them, when you're feeling hot, go somewhere cold. Open up the refrigerator or the freezer and get some of that cold air on you. So focus on your body sensations and getting that back to normal. And then once you have that down, I start to address the mind a little bit. If your mind's racing and you have all these thoughts, I kind of look at people when they're like that is up in the clouds a little bit. They're not very grounded. So I like to do some grounding techniques, mindfulness, and basically what that is helping people to engage all of their senses. So having them kind of sit in a chair, and if you want, you can do this. And you don't have to close your eyes if you don't want to. But I do have them either close their eyes or do like a soft gaze down, and I'll have them just notice everything around. Feel your back on the back of the chair. Feel the chair. Feel the arms and the plastic here, right, and the cushions underneath you, and what the floor maybe feels like. What do you smell? What do you hear? You can hear light fans. Right? You're not tasting anything, but at times, what are you tasting? What does it taste like? What does it sound like? What does it look like?
It's almost like on a focus on being present.
Exactly.
Which, we all don't do enough of, but like literally being in a moment.
Exactly. Because we're so used to focusing on the past or the future. Again, things that we can't really control.
Sure.
You know, what happens. So the only thing that you can focus on and control is right here and right now. And all you really need to be is here.
Yeah, think about how many moments during the day we just don't do that. We're constantly thinking of the next thing to do, or the phone that we have to look at, or, you know, the call that we have to take. But it really is true. I felt like I had more presence when my children were young, because you had to be present to them.
Yeah.
You know, if I was nursing or, you know, right there with them. Like, it was time that, and really was probably the best time of my life for that reason, because I physically was present and there was nothing else to think about or to do but tend to their needs at that minute, you know.
Right. Actually, you know, speaking of kids and kind of going back to, you know, what I do with children, some of these things are better done with adults. They understand this, and so sometimes it's hard.
Sure.
So if you have a child and you want to help them learn how to do mindfulness or breathing, blowing bubbles, blowing a balloon are great ways to help your kids relax themselves.
Yeah, well, now they're all digital too, these poor little ones.
Yeah.
So as much as we try to avoid it, they I guess it's just the way of the world too. So it's not like you can completely keep them out of it. But this time of year, getting to a park and just doing the old-fashioned things is probably not such a bad idea for parents.
No, being in nature is great. I mean, that you can be so mindful in nature and just sitting and kind of watching the trees and hearing the leaves and feeling the grass in your feet. And you know, there's something about just being out in nature that's just naturally soothing.
I think so many of us are drawn to the beach around here for
beach?
that reason.
Sure.
Like the whole world goes kind of crazy in the summer, like just needing to get there, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And it's so much work to get there too. But everybody does it.
Yeah, the sound of the water.
But it's very good for you, you know, to be outside, you know, and experience that. So tell me more. So you're dealing with these little ones. What would be the age range of clients that you have?
I work with kids from, my youngest right now is 3 years old, and I work all the way up to 21, and then young adults also. In home, it's the children ages 3 to 21. And so when I go to a home, anxiety is seen differently depending on the age of the child. So when I go to a home and there's a young child with anxiety, you see a lot of meltdowns and tantrums, and you know, it doesn't really seem to have any triggers to it or pattern to it. They can't communicate very well. They're not very emotionally intelligent to sit there and talk to you about what's frustrating them. So you see that in their meltdowns.
Sure. So how do you deal with that?
I use play therapy techniques because in a child's world, that's how they cope. They play. So I have what they call directive and non-directive. Non-directive play therapy is basically where you have a child in a room with a bunch of appropriate toys and kind of just let them go, and you intervene as you see necessary. But when you're going into homes, that's a little bit difficult. So I bring my play therapy toys to people's houses when the kids are that young, and I have them do some activities that's a little bit more directed.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you find things out through the choices that they make. And
Yeah. You can kind of see how they work it out. Like, for instance, I have a family, like a family of dolls, and so the kids love them. They're not dolls that you could just go buy in the store. They're special. They look like all kinds of families, and so I'll see them kind of playing house. And I can see what's going on in their inner world from them playing house. Or they're drawing. I'll ask them to draw something specific, themselves as a superhero and what their superpower is, and find out what they would do with it. Right? And that gives me a lot of information about what's happening and what they need in order to cope with what's happening in their lives.
Are they pretty receptive?
For the most part. The ones that I find the most difficulty is the children who are in foster homes, because they don't trust, right? So you have to spend a lot of time developing those relationships with kids before they are following your directions.
Wow.
And I don't want to be somebody coming in going, you need to do this. It's supposed to be more. I want them to want me there. And
Sure.
So that's
Well, that was my next question. Like, how does someone get your services, or how would someone go about like finding out that their child even needs to see someone like you?
So I advertise myself on Psychology Today. My practice is on there as well. I gave my phone number, so I don't know if that's a part of if that's going to be shown, but
Sure.
the name of my business is One Step at a Time Therapy Center. My office is in East Brunswick. I can be called to set up an appointment if they want to come to the office. If it's local, I will go in home, but it's an out of pocket. A lot of insurances don't pay for that.
For in-home
but
therapy?
I will go in home, and I like doing the in-home therapy because I can see the child in their environment,
Yes.
and I work with parents. So a lot of times, I think people are expecting me to come in and fix things.
Right.
But what I really do is I help the family to fix it because
Absolutely.
that's how it lasts longer.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times they need to change something in their environment or how they're responding.
Well, it must be hard for you. I mean, like, the nanny, I forget who she was,
Oh,
but
I
she
know
was
who you're
hysterical.
talking
But, I used to watch that show and think, well, she goes in and the children seem like they have the problem, but it's usually the parents that needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
So that must be hard, in your circumstance when you have to confront parents to say, you know what, this could be part of why you're getting this type of behavior.
Right. I don't necessarily go in and feel like the parents need to be fixed because children are born with certain temperaments too. It's not always necessarily something that the parent did to make the child that way.
Okay.
Although coping skills are learned. So if you do have a parent who is coping with their anxiety in one way, it's most likely that the child's going to cope that way also. And so if you're seeing issues or behavioral issues with that child, they're just, they need to have it modeled for them. So it's sometimes working with the parent and getting them to change their coping style a little bit so that the child could as well.
No, I agree.
But kind of going back to what we were talking about along the developmental path, in the older students, actually I was just reading a research article about teenagers in America. They did a study about who is the most anxious population in the United States, and it turns out that the teenage population is.
I know.
And so you see that
I've got a few of them in my house.
Right. There's a lot of demands on them.
It is.
They're social demands. They have to do well in school. They're thinking about college. They're trying to be independent, yet still be compliant with their parents. They're worried about their looks. Like, there is a lot going on with teenagers. And so lately I've been getting some calls for teenagers and working with them.
Yes.
And you see that a lot with, I see a lot more of the depression symptoms with that. I mean, a lot of times it's anxiety and they're thinking they can't do this. What's wrong with them? Why can't they?
I wonder, I mean, is it social media? I know we all just go to blame that, but they're constantly looking at other people's virtual fake lives and trying to measure up to that. And I just don't know if anyone ever can. I think at our age, we kind of know this isn't reality.
Right.
But for them, it's just such a strong reality that it just makes it difficult. I mean, my daughter's 21, she's a type A, and she's constantly making lists. And she's like, Mom, I've got this, I got that. And I say, Kate, just ground yourself. Take a minute and breathe and just, relax and don't worry about it. And then last night I sent her a text of her brother who fell asleep on the couch. He can fall asleep anywhere. And I said, this child will never need yoga. He is just completely has the gift of, and since he's infant, this is who he is. He really doesn't ever get really worked up over anything.
That's nice.
But I think it's different when you're, maybe a girl. I don't know. Do you see more girls than boys, or?
The boys, it comes out differently. I would probably say the girls seem to internalize it more, and they're quieter about it. The boys will, and this is not for everybody.
Yeah,
it's
but
not
just
like
what
100%.
you've found.
But in my experience, what I found, the boys will act out, or drugs, drinking, that kind of thing. That's what I found. Their coping skills are different. They cope differently, right? Because I mean, when you think about it, growing up, boys are not. They're not trained to share their emotions and cry and have those release of emotions.
Well, it's the competition too is different. Like girls, of course, compete, but like when we do this other class, my husband and I, the one man says, the reality is girls play tea party and dollhouse, and no one wins, at tea party. But the boys have, a certain different kind of drive with all of that. But, the world has changed quite a bit, and I think it's just trying to give them that constant love and, peace. But it's hard. It's not easy as parents today because so many of us hardly find that time too. So
that's right. It's demanding. And a lot of times I work with parents, like no matter what is going on with your child, even though you're telling me, I will have parents tell me, my day is so hectic. I wake up and I have to deal with all this and I have to deal with these behavioral issues and I go to work and then I come home and blah, 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 blah. And I said, no matter what you're doing, you need to find at least 10 to 15 minutes a day to find your calmness and your balance and come back to that. Because as parents, you want to react from a place of peace and calmness. You don't want to react from fear and anxiety.
Yes.
Because then that's what you're teaching your child. And I know that it's easier said than done.
Well, it's like everything can be bought, everything can be fixed, try to figure it out. And, at the end of the day, it comes down to you. You have to look in the mirror and say, am I providing this environment? Or,
that's right.
What can we give them, to help them with it? But it's obviously we're parenting differently than our parents did. So it's just, that's what we have to deal with. And at this point, just have to motor forward, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are your plans, from here, just to grow this beautiful business and help more people?
So, so right now we're actually moving to a larger office. We're in the process of, hopefully in June we'll be moving. I would like to hold some groups, some group counseling. I'd like for kids to be able to come and learn mindfulness skills. You don't always need to come to weekly therapy, talk therapy. I mean, sometimes it's hard for a kid to come into a session and just talk about their problems, So I think sometimes when you're with other people who are dealing with the same kind of stressors, being able to teach skills is important also. So
you accept insurance, and once you make that connection, can they come and utilize you as often as necessary, or do you kind of give them a idea of what they need?
So when somebody comes in for a weekly, so right now I'm in network with Cigna. Cigna is the only one that I'm in network with. I work with out-of-network insurance companies as well, so I work with people who have out-of-network and out-of-network benefits.
Okay.
I verify their benefits, I determine, something that would work for both of us. So I don't want to really turn anybody away, but sometimes insurance companies are just so difficult to deal with.
Right,
and they don't pay anything really. So So once they come in, I talk with them, I do an assessment, I determine what the needs are, and I like to see people, if they're coming in for individual counseling, I like to see them on a weekly basis for a while, because you ever meet somebody for an hour and then 2 weeks later meet them again, or 3 weeks later meet them again, you don't really remember. It's really hard to build a relationship. And
Sure.
I really emphasize the relationship that I have with the people that I work with. To me, that's the most important thing. If you can't trust me, you're not going to tell me anything.
Right.
So some of the work that I do in-home, even though I go in-home on my own, I also work with the Children's System of Care in New Jersey. So if a child's behaviors are becoming to a certain level, they can reach out to Perform Care New Jersey and get services for free in their home. There's a lot of agencies, but my agency is registered with them. I am the only one right now that's doing the in-home work. So most of my in-home families are through Perform Care and the Children's System of Care. But they're short-term. They could be long-term, but there's different levels. So if it's short-term, sometimes harder to develop that relationship.
Yes.
In 8 weeks, there's not really a lot of time. It's like strictly just skills and working with the parents.
Right. You have to give them the tools to basically fix it themselves.
Right.
And does that be effective at all?
I think so. Again, I think it's really about the relationship. If I'm going into somebody's home or somebody's coming into my office and I'm bringing them in going, okay, this is the first time I met you and these are the things that I'm seeing that you need to change, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Do you see how you're looking at me?
It's very hard to have someone come into your home because you constantly feel like, are they looking at this?
Right.
So even that first interaction has to be difficult. It's like you're breaking down barriers, trying to make people comfortable with that.
Right. And I try to get people to really see who I am, because I'm not that person who's going to go in and judge everything that you're doing. I really like to see every family is its own culture, right? Its
Sure.
own dynamics. And I can't really make those assumptions or judgments without knowing exactly how they work. So I think sometimes, if anything, people think I'm a bit invasive because I ask a lot of questions, but it's because I really want to get to know somebody, and
Sure.
I value confidentiality. I don't talk about people's business. So, learning about who they are, how they operate is the most important. And once they really see what my intentions are and how my intentions are here to help you with where you're at and help you try to figure out how to change what's happening without judging you as a parent and telling you what you're doing is not working, they open up a little bit. They relax a little bit. It takes a couple weeks, but...
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like very rewarding work. I mean, I'm sure that what you do is helping so many people and so many kids. And unfortunately, I think it's here to stay because anxiety and stress don't seem to be going anywhere.
Sure.
Now, the techniques you gave us were fantastic. Can you think of anything else we need to know to cope with our daily lives?
Yes. So, so cognitive behavioral therapy is something big that I like to use in my sessions. So when people start to get comfortable with me, they allow me to see their thoughts. So they share their thoughts with me. And so it's really easy to just kind of Google cognitive distortions and challenging anxious thoughts. And you will see these worksheets come up about how you actually challenge thoughts and recognizing your cognitive distortions. So everybody has cognitive distortions, right? A lot of the worries that we have are just not true. Those are cognitive distortions.
I think it's 80% of what's going on in my
Maybe
head.
even more than that. Probably even more than that. And also, it helps us to recognize that it's so easy to go to the negative. I do it. I'm not, everybody does it. And it takes a lot of practice. So you're like, oh, well, if this doesn't happen, then this bad thing is going to happen. But we never think, well, if this happens, maybe this good thing would happen.
Yes.
Really, it could go either way, but yet we go to the negative.
Yes.
Always, right? It's just so easy to go there. So I help people to address that and practice positive thinking. I also like to give people homework with gratitude, like gratitude journals, and thinking about the good things that happened in their day to see that, not everything is always negative.
Yeah.
I also like intention setting. In the morning when you wake up, setting an intention for yourself. What do you want to feel today? How do you want to feel today? At the end of the day, when you go to bed, what's going to be the one thing that you want to feel, right? And some people, it's happy or calm. What is it going to take for you to get there today? Plan for that to happen. Set that intention from the beginning.
Well, those are all really, really great. And I know that I say to my daughter, and I feel myself, if I come outside of myself and do something for someone else, somehow that can be the cure also of that constant inner, focus.
Absolutely.
So,
and then also, food intake, especially with the little ones. If your child is anxious and they're having some behavioral issues, stop the sugar, stop the dyes. So, the older kids like to drink caffeine, stop the caffeine.
okay.
So those kinds of changes to make.
Yeah,
too.
that's all very, very valid. Jacqueline, you've been awesome.
Thank
you
you.
so much for being with us. And I just think that this show is going to help so many people.
I hope so.
It's great that we can use you as a resource,
Yes.
and that you're close to this Woodbridge community too.
Absolutely.
And we're so happy to have had you today.
And if anybody has any questions about what they should do, they can feel free to give me a call.
reach out.
I do referrals as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us today on this wonderful episode of Wellness Woodbridge, and I hope that we have helped to diffuse your anxiety and stress a little bit. And remember that even as parents, it's a very important job, probably the most important one that we have, and we have to be there for our kids and for ourselves in order to be successful at that. So thank you again, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Wellness Woodbridge, and we hope to see you again soon.